In another video, Chipotle branded content strategy review, I looked at the way that Chipotle uses branded content to tap into the affective dimensions of consumer markets. In this video, I'm going to look at the way Chipotle uses web videos in their corporate social responsibility campaign. In the same way that they do in their branded content, Chipotle tries to elicit feelings in their customers. This is a kind of affective marketing, and the way I understand it, emotions are sort of feelings that you can articulate, happy, sad, mad, smad, whereas affect in this usage refers to the sort of amorphous, inarticulable dimension from which these emotions and other actions emerge. So a feeling of sadness emerges in you from the affective realm, and you think like, I'm sad, or you just cry. But prior to thinking I'm sad, or prior to crying, there's still a feeling there. And perhaps it's not, in you, but moving through a network that you're plugged into. So this is what I'm interested in as it relates to Chipotle's rhetorical strategy.
This is kind of the dark side of factory farming. He ends up with this factory farm out of having good intentions or wanting to kind of build a successful business.
So you have this sort of soul-searching moment with the farmer where he's realised, how did this happen, How did it come to this?
I'd try a test to see if I could make the farmer walk in a way that conveyed that he was quite sad. Usually the head would be attached with a ball and socket joint.
We came up with this idea of fitting a rare earth magnet inside the body and having a little bit of metal in the bottom of the head. You can look up, you can look down, you can get a lot of positions that you couldn't get with a normal joint.
For example, when the farmer's sad, we tilt the head forward, his chin sort of tucks in. We found that really sort of helped sell the fact that he was, feeling really sorry for himself.
And the sun fades down and then it gets quite dark and then the moon pops up and he's having some thoughts about his life. So Johnny wanted the sky to look a certain way and the shadows to be a certain length.
Winter sometimes can be quite golden, I think, but he wanted it to look very cold, very bluey snow.
The affective dimension of Chipotle's marketing is even more evident, I argue, in their corporate social responsibility campaign than it is in their branded content. Much of the CSR campaign is more verbal than the branded content or their interior design or their DJs or whatever. But the lines between the corporate social responsibility campaign and their branded content initiatives are kind of intentionally fuzzy. That is, the CSR does not position itself as fiction. However, on its website, Chipotle lists the Back to the Start video, the one with Willie Nelson's stirring rendition of Coldplay's The Scientist. They list that under their Food with Integrity campaign. The page Back to the Start behind the scenes and the accompanying video are also listed under the Food with Integrity page, and then they link from that to Chipotle's Cultivate Foundation, which strives to help fund initiatives that support sustainable agriculture, family farming, and culinary education. The film credits on the Back to the Start behind the scenes page are particularly telling in the way that they reflect the intermingling of art, advertising, commerce, and philanthropy. And these credits, Chipotle is listed as the client and as the agency, along with CAA. And the production company is Nexus Productions, which directed a Grammy-nominated video for indie rock band Franz Ferdinand, also made ads for Honda, and won the first Cannes Grand Prix for branded content for Back to the Start. In an article about this in Advertising Age, Cannes jury president Ari Savar said that, quote, "It wasn't the most talked about 99-cent burrito, but it was about an emotional connection with the audience," end quote. And this is precisely how emotional connection and affective networks are formed. Chipotle created a kind of dream team of sorts to make a video that would go with its Food with Integrity campaign. In just a few clicks, you get from Food with Integrity to Willie Nelson and Coldplay to the Cultivate Foundation. And this isn't idle internet surfing. These paths were established to encourage customers to move from food to commerce to feeling to philanthropy and back again. And the rest of the CSR campaign continues the affective persuasion. Matthew Ragas and Marilyn Roberts analyzed Chipotle's CSR campaign, and they interviewed Jim Adams, who said that the company promotes its Food with Integrity campaign to help customers, quote, deepen their emotional connection with Chipotle, end quote. And at the top of the Food with Integrity page on the website, Chipotle links to a Nightline segment in which Els talks about where their food comes from. And the sense of place Chipotle constructs in videos like these is linked associatively to notions of integrity. Even when talking about food costs, it always comes back to affect.
This isn't cheap for you.
It's not. Chipotle has higher food costs than our competitors.
Much higher, right?
A little bit higher, but we have a business model that allows us to invest in higher quality food. And it's great because obviously this higher quality food tastes better, which brings people back, and it forms a deep bond with the customer.
And whether it's a deep emotional connection or a deep bond, Chipotle executives stick to the talking points memo. Food with Integrity is about creating a sense of depth and trust that is the foundation of its corporate ethos. It is this corporate ethos, this manufactured depth and trust, that allows consumers to be persuaded by emotional appeals. Whatever your persuasion, as long as you don't mind the sort of higher price point, Chipotle will add feelings to your order. It may be empathy for people, or nostalgia for an agrarian past, or a desire to help the environment, or a respect for animals. Chipotle's got a feeling for you. Chipotle uses online delivery systems as part of its CSR campaign to evoke these feelings. They make extensive use of online video for emotional appeals about people, animals, and the environment. The CSR page says people are people too, and they tout their work with the International Rescue Committee, which helps refugees get jobs. They claim to provide their employees with opportunities for advancement, with link to their current careers page. On the careers page, we see more videos like a day in the life working at Chipotle with upbeat music, close-ups of fresh food and happy employees, and the sort of iconic branding. And then the CSR campaign is made up of appeals not just to consumers, but also to potential workers. In Cultivating Future Leaders, Monty Moran, Chipotle's co-CEO, talks about the way that Chipotle cares about its employees.
At Chipotle, 95% of our managers come from crew. It's a place where when you come in as a crew person, you know that it's Chipotle's desire that you become a manager and that you have all the help and support you could ever need to get there.
You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Wonderful job.
When the manager cares about each and every person on their team, when the manager believes in each and every person on their team and wants nothing more than to make those people successful, those people feel it. And when those people feel it, they become committed. They become empowered.
The link between feeling and commitment is not incidental. This is a thread that runs throughout Chipotle's CSR media. Get people to feel, and you can better shape their actions by getting them to commit to your brand. And this works on the employee and the customer side of the business. I should note that Day in the Life and Cultivating Future Leaders are in the careers section of the website, and they're linked to from the CSR section. So I lumped them together here because there's some nice similarities between these videos and the CSR messages. The specific CSR messages focus much more on animals, the environment, and agriculture than people. Take, for example, Paul Willis' story. The video starts out with white words on a black background. The black screen fades into an open farm vista in Iowa that contrasts greatly with the words like, confinement, indoors, brutal conditions, and crowded together. Viewers see blue skies, red barns, and ponds. They see sunsets, green tractors, and windmills, and they see pigs scampering around. The video cuts to a small-town USA street with people on bikes, American flags, a post office, and farm trucks passing one another on the road. Clad in denim overalls, Willis starts to tell his story.
One of my main jobs as a boy was to take my bicycle, ride out to the hog field, and check the pigs.
With his ethos established, he starts talking about his ideals as soft guitar and synthesizer music plays in the background.
The reason raising pigs the way we do, free range, pasture raised, is because we believe in anything that doesn't stress the animal is a good thing. Like on my farm, we never allow anybody to hit a pig or anything like that. And so they're not afraid and they're not stressed. And if they're frightened, you can take a great animal and produce really bad meat, because that fear will release lactic acid, break down the muscle structure. You end up with tough, nasty meat.
Willis states a connection that Chipotle wants customers to make. The taste of the food, the treatment of the animals, and the stewardship of the land all make their product better and presumably worth paying more for. While you would expect Paul Willis' story to be about Paul Willis, it's actually not so much about the farmer as it is about branding every aspect of the Chipotle network. And part of the way that they do this is to use verbal, visual, and musical cues to stir feelings in the audience. Those feelings, then, will be transferred to the brand, in this case, the Niman Ranch meat that Chipotle uses. Willis is, in some ways, the new face of Niman Ranch. Niman Ranch is a designer brand of meat. It was started by Bill Niman in the San Francisco Bay Area. Niman left the company that bears his name in the reorganization that followed its bankruptcy and acquisition by Natural Food Holdings in Chicago. But before all that, Niman reached out to Willis to help him meet the demand from Chipotle. As the geographical footprint of the brand, spanning from the Bay Area to Iowa to Chicago, suggests, the bucolic farm that viewers see in the videos is a carefully cropped ideal. In fact, according to one article, Willis and Niman recruited a network of more than 500 Midwestern hog farmers who signed contracts to raise pigs according to Niman's strict protocols. After he was ousted in 2009, Niman refused to eat Niman Ranch meat, claiming that the company no longer followed his protocols. Willis is the face, and his Iowa farm is the place on the videos that Chipotle shot and uploaded back in 2011, but it gets its pork from Niman Ranch, which is not actually a place. It's not an actual ranch. It's what I like to call a branded node in Chipotle's network. And so this node includes, people like Niman and Willis. It includes places like the farms, but it also includes animals and equipment and all this kind of stuff. So another node in Chipotle's network is Polyface Farms, which is run by celebrity farmer Joel Salatin, who was featured in Michael Pollan's Omnivore's Dilemma, in the movie Food Inc., and in the Nightline segment on Chipotle, featured at the top of their Food with Integrity page.
Joel Salatin is the owner of Polyface Farms, nestled in the hills of Swoope, Virginia. He has a different way of raising his pigs. He wants them, happy. They live in the woods and
they get to fully express their pigness. This fully respects and honors the pigness of the pig. And, in our culture today, our Western, reductionist, Greco-Roman, linear, fragmented, disconnected, systematized, all parts-oriented culture, we don't ask how to make a pig happy. We ask how do we grow them faster, fatter, bigger, cheaper. And that's not a noble goal.
Chipotle is one of Joel's biggest customers because Steve Ells is a fast food mogul who cares about the pigness of the pig. Chipotle buys no pork from factory farms. Why?
First of all, you can breathe here, and it smells great. You can't breathe in a confinement operation. The odor is horrific. And you can see the terror in the pig's eyes, and they scurry away from you. And when I first saw that 10 years ago, I knew that I never wanted to buy another confinement pig and have that be part of our business model.
Salatin's and Willis's stories both bring to mind a sort of nostalgia for an older way of farming, concerns over the environment, some respect for animals, although they are still meat. And so the affective dimension here extends to the animals when Salatin talks about happy pigs. In this little bit of anthropomorphizing, Salatin overlays a human emotion, happiness, on the life of a pig. While we may translate a pig's actions into human emotions, we can't really say that a pig feels happiness, because happiness is something that humans invented to talk about their feelings with other humans. But we can certainly tap into the affective dimension of the lives of pigs. We feel things when we see pigs scampering around in a field, and we feel other things when we see pigs climbing all over one another in a CAFO. So Chipotle wants consumers to associate the Niman Ranch brand with positive feelings, but they also want consumers to buy the meat. And one way that they can get consumers to buy the meat is to make people feel good about themselves. And so they do this by making an argument that their meat purveyors, Niman Ranch in this case, are taking care of the environment for them. And this ecological argument comes through even more strongly in another video, Tall Grass Prairie. In this video, Willis calls the prairie one of the most productive systems on Earth, and we see similar vistas of prairies and blue skies, and he says all of these species working together are more productive than any monoculture. Diversity, reconstruction, and restoration of land, locavore sentiments, and an attachment to an ancient past are all expressed in the video.
A good native prairie will have over 200 different species. And so in our reconstructed and restored prairie, we have about 130 forbs, which are the perennial wildflowers. I've tried to be as true as possible. In other words, collect and put native ecotype seed that isn't more than 50 miles away from here. In other words, this is the stuff that's been growing here for the last 10,000 years. 99.9% of native prairie in the state of Iowa has disappeared. And so pieces of actual native prairie are very rare. They're more rare than the rainforest. And so this is what attracted me to the idea of reconstructing and restoring prairie.
It sounds good, but if you start to scratch the surface of what Willis is saying, words like reconstructed and restored and true and monoculture jump out as sort of having been glossed. Just what state or what era are we trying to restore the land to? If we're reconstructing something that's already been constructed, that suggests that we're not going back to pre-agrarian age, but back to the beginning of agriculture itself. And so we have to ask, was agriculture back then efficient enough to feed our current population? Like the quest for an authentic burrito, the back to the start message is really the start of a sort of enchanting wild goose chase. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing. However, the affective dimension is a space through which this sort of micro-political juice flows. If you feel good about eating at Chipotle because Paul Willis doesn't hit his pigs, then that's fine, but micro-politics are always insufficient. They always feed back into macro-politics. And Els says in the Nightline video that their business model allows for them to spend more money on meat than their competitors. There's almost certainly a macro-political dimension to this business model. So we might look into the issue of immigration, for example, to see how Chipotle operates in the macro-political realm. But we don't have time for that here. That's another video. So until next time, I'm Will Burdett. Thanks for listening.